The Met Office deep dive published on June 2026, the day after the most extraordinary May in British meteorological history officially ended, did not downgrade the summer outlook. It did not walk back the record-breaking heat wave that had just delivered 35.1 degrees Celsius at Kew Gardens, the hottest May day ever recorded in the UK. It asked, plainly and specifically, what summer 2026 now looks like from the atmospheric position Britain has arrived at, after the most extreme spring on record. And the answer it provided, drawing on the data that both the ECMWF and the UKMO modeling systems are currently resolving, was this. Although summer 2026 has started wetter and fresher than spring 2026 ended, the general signals for summer remain broadly positive, with warm and perhaps very warm conditions expected to return as the summer progresses. That phrase, warm and perhaps very warm, is Met Office language for a summer that the forecasting consensus has not finished delivering its heat. It is the forecast that sits behind the 40-degree question, the question of whether the temperature that shattered every previous expectation in July 2022 could be approached or matched again in the summer ahead. And the answer, updated as of June 2026, is more specific and more alarming than the current weather outside anyone's window might suggest. The Met Office's study, published in the Weather Journal, led by senior scientist Dr. Gillian Kay, is the scientific document that frames the 40-degree question with the most precision currently available in peer-reviewed climate science. Its findings are specific and striking. The chance of exceeding 40 degrees Celsius is now more than 20 times more likely than it was in the 1960s, and has almost trebled since the year 2000. Dr. Kay stated directly, "The chance of exceeding 40 has been rapidly increasing, and it is now over 20s, times more likely than it was in the 1960s. Because our climate continues to warm, we can expect the chance to keep rising. We estimate a 50-50 chance of seeing a 40-degree day again in the next 12 years. That 50-50 probability assessment is a median probability across a 12-year window. It does not specify which of those 12 years is most likely to produce the event. But the atmospheric context of summer 2026, following a spring that confirmed itself as the warmest and driest in the UK's recorded history, with a super El Niño developing in the Pacific and the Met Office's own seasonal forecast assigning double the normal probability to a hot summer outcome, makes 2026 one of the stronger candidates. Years within that 12-year window. The update is not a guarantee, it is a probability distribution, and the distribution has moved. The Met Office's Summer 2026 blog, published on June 2nd at the same time as the deep dive, drew on the full historical record of UK summer temperatures from 1884 to 2025 to place the current seasonal forecast in its longest possible context. It's central, finding UK summers are generally getting warmer, and many of the most notable summers with record-breaking temperatures now belong to recent years. The story of UK summer is not just about the occasional standout hot season. It is about a long-term trend in the climate, with warm summers becoming more common and new heat records arriving more often. Looking across the full record from 1884, one of the clearest signals is how strongly the warmest summers are increasingly clustered in the 21st century. The 10 warmest summers in the UK's 141-year record are dominated by the most recent decades. The 10 coolest summers are overwhelmingly concentrated in the early decades of the 20th century. That distribution is not random fluctuation. It is a trend line that the blog's analysis confirms is driven by the long-term warming of the UK's atmospheric baseline, a trend that the spring of 2026 and the May bank holiday heat wave have confirmed is continuing at its historical pace or faster. The deep dive's specific June outlook provides the immediate context within which the summer 40-degree question sits. The June forecast describes a changeable spell at the beginning of meteorological summer, as Atlantic low-pressure systems move across the UK, bringing showers or longer spells of rain to most areas. Towards the middle of June, high pressure will probably begin to become more dominant in the south, at least for brief periods. Temperatures are likely to be close to or slightly below normal at first, perhaps rising above average later with a chance of a few hot days. That phrase, a chance of a few hot days within the June forecast window, is where the 40-degree question begins to become operationally relevant. A few hot days in the second half of June, building from the same southerly continental flow pattern that delivered 35.1 degrees in May, arriving into a landscape whose soil moisture deficit has not recovered between the heat wave and the next warm spell, could produce peak temperatures that approach or challenge the top end of what the current atmospheric baseline is capable of delivering. The deep dive confirms the general signals for summer remain broadly positive for warmth. The question is, which warm spell within that broadly positive summer contains the peak that reaches furthest? The 40.3 degrees Celsius recorded at Coningsby in Lincolnshire on July 19, 2022. remains the all-time UK temperature record, the highest temperature ever measured in Britain. The May 2026 event challenged and broke the monthly May record by 2 full degrees, confirming that the UK's temperature distribution has shifted materially upward. But 40.3 degrees is the ceiling that the current record represents, and the Dr. K study's finding that 45 degrees is possible in today's climate, and that 46.6 degrees is plausible, places the all-time record not as a stable ceiling, but as a provisional high water mark in a distribution that is still moving upward. The Met Office's projection that month-long heat waves and temperatures hitting more than 45 degrees could become part of the UK's new normal is the long-range end of the same analysis that places a 50-50 probability on 40 degrees being reached again within 12 years. Now, these projections are not individual speculative scenarios. They are the outputs of global climate model ensembles calibrated to the current atmospheric composition, producing a probability distribution across possible temperature outcomes that has shifted decisively toward its warmer tail in the past decade. The global temperature baseline from which summer 2026 is launching is the specific context that gives the Met Office's 40-degree update its most alarming framing. The Met Office's 2026 global temperature forecast placed the central estimate at 1.46 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial baseline, making 2026 likely the 4th consecutive year with global average temperatures above 1.4 degrees, and flagging the possibility of a temporary exceedance of 1.5 degrees for only the 2nd year in the observational record. Professor Adam Scaife, who leads the Met Office's global temperature forecast team, stated, "The last 3 years are all likely to have exceeded 1.4 degrees, and we expect 2026 will be the 4th year in succession to do this." Dr. Nick Dunstone, who led production of the forecast, added, 2024 saw the first temporary exceedance of 1.5 degrees, and our forecast for 2026 suggests this is possible again. This highlights how rapidly we are now approaching the 1.5 degree Paris Agreement target. A global average temperature running at 1.46 degrees above pre-industrial adds a specific amount of additional thermal energy to every regional weather event, including the UK warm spells that produce the highest temperatures at individual monitoring stations. The 35.1 degree May reading at Kew Gardens arrived in a global climate running at approximately 1.46 degrees above baseline. The next comparable UK warm event will arrive in the same climate or a marginally warmer one. The progression is not reversing. The Super El Niño that the ECMWF placed at 100% probability of developing by November 2026 adds the specific oceanic amplification layer that El Niño events contribute to the global temperature record. Zeke, housefather of Berkeley Earth, confirmed that strong El Niño events boost global surface temperatures significantly, with the largest effects felt in the year following the event's peak. If the 2026 to 2027 Super El Niño follows the pattern of the 2015 to 2016 and 2023 to 2024 events, global average temperatures in 2027 could push toward the 1.7 degree projection that James Hansen's team at Columbia University has placed on the 2027 outlook. The UK summers of 2027 and 2028 will be launching from a global baseline warmer than the one summer 2026 is currently using. The 40-degree threshold that carries a 50-50 probability across the next 12 years is not a probability distributed equally across those years. Each successive year launches from a warmer base, meaning the probability of the threshold being reached is lower in 2026 than in 2030, and lower in 2030 than in 2034. But the atmospheric configuration of summer 2026, the warmest spring on record, the Super El Niño in development, the Met Office's broadly positive summer signals, means 2026 is not a low probability year within that distribution. It is one of the most thermally primed years for an extreme summer event in the UK's recent climate history. The infrastructure readiness question for a potential 40-degree summer event in 2026 is one that the May bank holiday heat wave has already tested at 35 degrees and found wanting in specific documented ways. Network Rail's parliamentary evidence confirmed that rail surface temperatures in direct sunlight run more than 20 degrees above ambient air temperature. At 35 degrees ambient, the level already reached in May, rail surface temperatures reached approximately 55 degrees on the most exposed sections. At 40 degrees ambient, they would reach 60 degrees Celsius. The buckling risk at those surface temperatures is not a projection from a climate model. It is the physical engineering reality of continuously welded steel at temperatures approaching the limits of its designed thermo. L tolerance. The 2022 July event, when Coningsby recorded 40.3 degrees, suspended Thameslink in Great Northern. Services entirely produced line-side fires from breaking sparks on overheated track and resulted in infrastructure damage assessments extending days beyond the heat event. A comparable event in summer 2026 would arrive, with the additional complication that the rail network has already been through a significant heat stress event in May. Infrastructure that has experienced one extreme thermal cycling event in the same season carries higher pre-existing fatigue stress into the next. The probability of a 40-degree summer event arriving on top of a 35-degree May event in a single summer is exactly the kind of compound extreme that climate change science consistently identifies as increasing in frequency faster than either individual extreme alone. The mortality mathematics of a 40-degree summer event in 2026 sit within the broader statistical framework that the LSHTM Imperial, college modeling, the ONS excess death data, and the British Heart Foundation's cardiovascular risk research have collectively established. The 570 projected heat-related deaths across England and Wales from the 4 peak days of the May 2026 bank holiday event were modeled against temperatures peaking at 33 to 35 degrees. The temperature-mortality relationship that underlies those projections is not linear. It accelerates at the upper end, meaning each degree above the established threshold produces proportionally more excess deaths than the degree below it. The 4,500 excess deaths attributed to the 2022 heat periods, the year that produced 40.3 degrees at Coningsby, are the documented outcome of an event that peaked at that level after a summer of progressive warming that provided at least some acclimatization to the population. A 40-degree event arriving in summer 2026 after a spring that has already produced one extraordinary heat event would arrive into a population with partial acclimatization from the May event, but with physiological reserves already partially depleted by that preceding stress. The mortality projection for a 40-degree summer event in 2026 is not identical to the 2022 figures. It is shaped by the specific temporal sequence in which the two even T's arrive within the same calendar year, a configuration that climate scientists have not previously had occasion to model as a realistic single-year scenario for the UK. The water resource context within which any summer 40-degree event in 2026 would land is substantially more precarious than the context in which the 2022 event occurred. England's reservoirs entered summer 2022 in a drought-stressed but not crisis-level condition. The 2026 summer is beginning with 5 regions of England in official drought status, Ardingly Reservoir at 64% of capacity, having already been moved to drought status by the Environment Agency before the May heatwave peaked, and a soil moisture deficit that the Environment Agency described as among the most severe in nearly 7 decades. A 40-degree summer event arriving on top of that pre-existing hydrological baseline would drive evapotranspiration from open water bodies, from chalk aquifers, and from agricultural soils at the maximum rate the British atmosphere can produce. The reservoir levels that multiple water companies are already managing with emergency planning protocols would move further below the thresholds that trigger temporary use bans toward the lower emergency thresholds that trigger more extensive restrictions on non-household water use. The Met Office's summer forecast update has not changed the water resource trajectory that the spring drought and the May heat wave have already established. It is confirmed that the summer which follows contains the atmospheric conditions to deepen it further. The practical forecast for the weeks ahead, as updated by the June 2nd deep dive, is one of alternating patterns rather than sustained heat. June begins with Atlantic changeable weather that brings the cooler, wetter conditions that the parched landscape of England urgently needs for reservoir recharge and crop relief. High pressure then reasserts itself across the south toward the middle of the month, bringing the warm spells that the broadly positive summer signals are pointing toward. The chance of a few hot days in that mid-June window is the first operational opportunity within summer 2026 for the 40-degree question to become more than a probability estimate. Whether it does will depend on the precise position and intensity of the blocking ridge when it develops, the specific trajectory of the southerly continental flow that any blocking pattern draws northward, and the degree to which the atmospheric energy available for extreme temperature production is built across the intervening unsettled period. The Met Office's summer forecast is updated continuously as new model runs resolve the evolving pattern. What can be said today, on the basis of the June Skeka deep dive and the full scientific context around it, is that the 40-degree question for summer 2026 has not been closed by the unsettled start to June. It has been deferred to the warm spells that are forecast to follow it